All right, today's screencast is going to be actually kind of a quick one. We're going to be looking at what economists call the four types of goods. In particular, we're going to be looking at public goods and common resources, and what, excuse me, and what public goods and common resources have in common is they are quote unquote free. And free goods provide a special challenge for economic analysis. Most goods in our economy are allocated in market. Simple supply and demand creates a price. Price determines the quantity sold. Okay, that's going to help us lead to consumer and producer surplus. We can measure dead weight loss, all kinds of different things we can do when we put a price on a good. But public goods and common resources, really, you can't put a price on. Okay, because when goods are available free of charge, the market forces that normally allocate goods are absent. And what happens is people tend to either overconsume or underproduce those goods, right? Or both, actually, a lot of times. So what happens is it's very hard for private markets to function and actually provide goods that are quote unquote free. Now, in these cases, government policy can often remedy this market failure. So if you remember in chapter 10, we talked about the market failure of externalities. Uh, Free goods create other market failures. Okay, we're going to talk about a couple other forms of market failure. So when thinking about two types of goods, it's often helpful to think, is the good excludable and is it rival in consumption? So the idea of excludability is really simple. Can you prevent somebody who doesn't pay for it from using it? Not all goods are excludable. Not all goods can you prevent somebody from using if they don't pay for it. So for example, I've put this video on YouTube. Um, Anyone can watch it. You don't even have to be a student at Plainfield South. Okay? Rivaling consumption is kind of a different concept. Rivaling consumption is the idea that one person's use of the good limits the ability of others to benefit from it. So, for example, the pen in your hand would be rivaling consumption. If I'm writing with the pen that you're holding in your hand, you can't, right? Watching this video isn't rivaling consumption. You can watch it. A student who's in one of my other classes can watch it and benefit from it as well. So once we determine these two different ways, characteristics of goods, we can actually plot them on a Punnett square. So is the good excludable, yes or no? Is the good rival in consumption, yes or no? Goods that are excludable and are rival in consumption are private goods. This is the typical good that we've dealt with in the economy so far. Okay, they're excludable, they're rival in consumption. If you don't pay for it, you don't get it, and two people can't really benefit from it at once. Goods that are excludable but not rival in consumption are natural monopolies. Okay, fire protection. We'll talk about how that's a natural monopoly in class. I've got an interesting video about that. Cable TV, toll roads would be examples of this, right? So far so good. These goods up here are easy to measure. Markets work for them because if you don't pay for them, you don't get them. Goods that are not excludable though are common resources which are not excludable, not in our rival in consumption. Those would include fish in the ocean and the environment, and then public goods, which are neither excludable nor rival in consumption. Tornado sirens, national defense, number of other things. Okay? So public goods, which are neither excludable nor rival in consumption, create a particular economic problem known as the free rider problem. And that's the idea that because you can't prevent somebody from enjoying the benefits of it, people will use the good, but they'll avoid paying for it. So imagine for a moment if you tried to make money selling tickets to a fireworks show. Nobody would pay for it because all they have to do to benefit, all they have to do to enjoy it is look up. Now, the free rider problem prevents private markets from supplying public goods. It's just not to their advantage to do it. As a result, when it comes to public goods, generally it becomes the domain of government to produce public goods. So a great example is roads, right? It's very hard to prevent people from enjoying the benefits of roads. I mean, I suppose you could have private toll roads. If you've ever been to Florida, there are some examples of private toll roads. They're very unpopular, and people generally view building roads as kind of one of those purviews of government. It's supposed to be what government's job is. So the government has to decide which public goods to produce. Um, and the government will do this based on the costs and the benefits, right? They're going to weigh the cost of the project and the benefit of the project. And if the benefits exceed the costs, the government should produce the public good. The problem is, the issue becomes with the free rider problem is, some notable public goods are national defense, basic research into things like the relationship between cholesterol and heart disease, right? Not specific patentable research like how does a drug work, but basic research and fighting poverty. Now the government will provide public goods when the costs outweigh the benefits. The issue becomes actually trying to perform cost benefit analysis. Okay, so usually determining the cost of a project is actually pretty easy. Okay, so the government will decide to produce it if the benefits outweigh the cost, right? So determining cost is usually pretty straightforward. The hard part with cost benefit analysis is actually determining the benefit. And the problem with this is people tend to overestimate, okay, over-explain how much they would benefit from something, okay? And there are some great examples of this. There's some really interesting research into what is a human life worth, what is the value of time, and what are the values of aesthetics. So for example, if you've ever been to Oswego East versus going to Plainfield East, or Plainfield South, excuse me, Oswego East is a beautiful campus. It in some ways puts Plainfield South to shame. However, the taxpayers of Oswego East paid significantly more to construct that building. So is the aesthetics of this beautiful public building worth more than the lower cost? Okay, and it's very, very hard to put a dollar amount on that. And what policymakers will often do is they'll rely on surveys. Surveys have their own issues. We're going to talk in class on Monday about some of the issues with surveys. Surveys have their own issues, like, for example, can you trust people to be truthful? When you poll people, do people actually speak the truth? Are you getting a representative sample of the people in the community? Now, common resources are similar to public goods in that they're not excludable. So anyone can use them. The big difference is one person's use of a common resource diminishes the ability of other people to use it. So when I use a common resource, that's less for you. Think of it like a dish, or if somebody's not home at Halloween and they leave out a bowl of candy, okay, that's a common resource. Anyone can take it. If I take all the candy out of the dish, that doesn't leave any for you. And that's called a tragedy of the commons. And we'll talk in class on Tuesday, or in class, what the tragedy of the commons actually is. It's a parable. It's something that actually happened. It's not even really a parable. That kind of shows how we can overuse something that's available to everyone. Kind of the classic example of a tragedy of the commons today is fish in the ocean. So what's happening with fish in the ocean is because anyone can take fish out of the ocean, it becomes a race to catch as many fish as you possibly can, right? And each country is trying to fish as quickly as they can, and what's happening is the number of fish available are declining rapidly. Another example of this would have been buffalo on the prairie during the 1860s to the 1880s, where buffalo hunters went out and killed as many buffalo as they possibly could. And they killed them for their hides, right? And the goal was to get as many buffalo in one outing as possible. Now, to kind of summarize this section, and again, I said it's kind of a short section, market rights are really important. We're going to talk about why market rights matter in class a little bit. When there aren't market rights, when there aren't property rights, the market will tend to fail, right? And when the market fails, oftentimes government intervention might be the solution, right? The government can instill property rights.